happy to be here with you all today, celebrating games, video games, tabletop, card games, celebrating inclusivity, celebrating creativity, and also community. And in that spirit, it is fantastic to look out across this audience, see everyone wearing their masks, and taking care of each other. We're almost through this thing. We'll get there. So again, thanks to everybody.
Yeah. Woo!
Tell you, I am excited to introduce our panel today, both folks from Rogues, folks making games for Rogue, and also a very special guest, which I know a lot of you are here for and excited to see. So, first up, I'm excited to introduce you to our founder and CEO, and friend of mine of over 20 years, Matt Casamassina, and also our CSO, Chris Archer, someone who teaches me something new about game development every single day. Next up, I'm happy to introduce Tyler Maitland, the founder and CEO of Oh My Me Games and winner of the inaugural Rogue Jam competition with their fantastic game, Sea Frog. Is Carlos Lizarraga, the co-developer of the fantastic shooter Sprawl. Next up is the creative director and plot twist developer of The Last Case of Benedict Fox, Bartek Lezakovsky.
That's him. My father. What secrets did he take to his grave?
Glad you came back, my beautiful canvas.
Are playable right here at PAX in the Rogue Games booth over on the 4th floor of the Convention Center.
Yeah! Woo!
It seems I have an empty chair next to me. There must be one more person to bring out. The person that I know so many of us are here to see and to witness. Let's cue the music.
Oh, there he is.
Goodness, Reggie, it is so good to have you joining us here today. You know, before this on Twitter, we asked folks to submit some questions. We got lots of great entries. I'm going to answer 2 of them, though, right here. Yes, Reggie's body is ready.
There you go.
And the other is, oh, I seem to have forgotten that English translation of Mother 3 back at the hotel room, but hey, next year, who knows what can happen?
That was great. That was great.
No Mother 3 with me today, but I am working on Mother 4, so talk to me about that.
Real quick, Reggie's going to have some wonderful stories today about his time at Nintendo and lots of other things, but I also want to encourage you all to read his wonderful book, Disrupting the Game, From the Bronx to the Top of Nintendo. There's wonderful stories in there, but also great bits of inspiration, tips on leadership, practical advice for getting through this life. So it's an amazing book. I hope all of you pick it up. So Reggie, the book does delve pretty deep into Nintendo. I wonder if you could maybe share one of the funniest anecdotes from your time there.
You know, it's interesting. When I wrote the book, I really didn't want it to be a Nintendo tell-all. what I wanted to do was something that would have a lot more service, not only to fans of the gaming community, but whether it's someone just starting off on their career, someone who's mid-career. So that's where all of these so whats come from within the book itself, for those of you who've read it. You know, in terms of a funny story or an anecdote, you know, one that's not in the book. So I'll share just a little story that's not in the book, because I couldn't come up with a so what of, you know, what was the point of the story. But one of the last products I was involved in at Nintendo was obviously the Nintendo Switch. And as we were getting prepared to launch that system, we did a big event in New York City. And this is in January, right before launch.
Oh.
And it was a pretty hectic event. Mr. Miyamoto was on hand for this event. Mr. Aonuma, producer for Breath of the Wild, was on hand. And I would say anxiety was high.
Yeah, definitely.
As we were getting ready to launch this event. And so members of my team came up with a great idea to just blow off steam during this launch time. And we went to a Billy Joel concert.
Nice.
True story, right? So this is when Billy Joel was doing his monthly events at Madison Square Garden. And you know, we just happened to be there at the right time. And so, who knew? We were in our chairs, Billy Joel is performing, and I look, and Mr. Miyamoto knew all the words.
Of course.
Mr. Aonuma was singing along. I mean, it was really fun to see. And you know, I guess if there is a point of the story, it's that, you know, all of us, you know, all of you folks here on this table with me, you know, we're all real people. You know, we all have our passions. We all have the things that we do in addition to creating great content, in addition to all of the other things we do. And it was just so wonderful seeing those two, you know, world-class developers just having a good time as we were about to go unveil the Nintendo Switch literally the next day. So, fun story that's not in the book.
Music is one of those truly universal human experiences. You know, we all like what we like, but we all enjoy, you know, music. And I think the same is true with games. It is truly a global language that is spoken all over the world.
Agreed.
Rogue had a chance to really experience that at the beginning of this year when we had our inaugural Rogue Jam event, where we worked with our friends at IGN, and we put together a 5-episode series kind of inspired by Shark Tank with, you know, a couple of goals. You know, one was we wanted to, you know, meet some amazing developers and play some great games, but we also wanted to put the spotlight on those developers and to show what they go through to make the games that all of us in here enjoy playing. We had hundreds of games submitted from all around the world, and it was really hard for us to you know, whittle that list down to 15 finalists. And there were a lot of arguments. You know, Matt, I think you can attest to this. A lot of arguments when it came down to picking, many arguments when it came down to picking the winner. But we did come up with the winner, and like I said in the intro, that winner is here with us today, Tyler, with his game Sea Frog. I mean, Matt, can you kind of talk a little bit about why it was that Sea Frog really popped out and took home the grand prize?
I mean, the honest truth, number one is that Rogue's obsessed with Metroidvanias. Everyone will tell you that it's kind of it's an over-obsession, but if you look at our booth this week, we've got 3 on display. They're all very different. What I think drew us to Sea Frog is, you know, we're looking for new experiences on existing genres. So when you look at the Metroidvanias out there, many of them are amazing. You know, everything from, I'm not going to mention names, but tons of great games out there we love. What drew me to this one was that it was a skateboarding hybrid too. So you got around the world on a skateboard, and as you can see here, you're grinding through everything. And it just opened up a whole new possibility for retraversal gameplay. And that's what initially drew us. And then what kept us, I think, was the controls And so we found that there was a base for them to build upon and to stand out. So good work.
Thank you. I mean, it's a hell of a game. Please come by and give it a try at the booth. Rich, you were up. Yeah.
Before we move on, I think it's really important to understand, and in particular with this game, to me, this is a classic example of a game where it's easy to pick up the controller and start to play. It's really challenging to master. To have the right timing to, turn those screws, unlock different elements. That's what, for me as an early player to that build, that's what drew me in.
I mean, as the creator of the game, Tyler, and as everyone here, has their own creativity that they have in their lives. What was the spark? What was kind of the impetus that you said, I have to make this game. I have to will this game into existence.
Yeah, I mean, our main goal is like uniqueness, kind of like you guys say. It's like it was kind of at the top of the list of what we wanted to accomplish with the game. And we even pushed it maybe a little too unique, where it didn't test always well, and then it's like, let's change it up, throw that away, move it around, and now we're finally in a really good spot with it. We're really happy with it. Yeah, it's kind of, we're just trying to do the indie dream a little bit, and it's working out so far really well. And, yeah, we're really happy to be here.
Awesome. I mean, making games is essentially you kind of take your heart out and you kind of show it to the world and you say, I hope you like this. And it's important, it's imperative that we celebrate that vulnerability that game developers have when they show us their dreams, when they show us what they're making. And so I really appreciate you being here and everything that you've done so far with Seafrog. Thank you. Next up, I don't want to just talk about Rogue Jam today because we do have other panelists here with games in the Rogue booth. Carlos, you're here with Sprawl. You came into game development from a kind of a different trajectory, a different angle. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into making games?
Well, like most things in my life, I have no idea why I'm here, standing with these people. I'm a musician, first and foremost. I come from music production, I'm a live performer, I DJ, I've played all kinds of festivals, clubs, that kind of stuff. But the whole reason I even got into music in the first place is because I grew up playing games and modding games, One of the first things I remember doing on a computer was my dad installing MechWarrior for me when I was like 5 years old. After that, I started making mods for Halo around the time that I was 10 or 11. I remember very distinctly getting more and more into it. It wasn't just maps. At one point I started making weapons. And I remember in order for me to sync up the animations for the weapons and the sound, I suddenly needed to get a sound editor. I suddenly found the need to start playing with sound. And as I started doing that, I noticed the rhythms that would happen when you would do certain things. You cock a magazine, you put it back in, it goes ka-ka. Repeat that a couple times, then you get a beat. And I was like, this is the fundamentals of something that I don't quite understand, and then I got into music as a result. I had a very good career doing that, and I still do, but when quarantine first hit, when COVID hit, shows, music production gigs, all that went into the toilet. It didn't exist anymore, And especially for dance music, which is a very contextual form of music, you need that atmosphere, you need the live situation, you need the festival, you need the club, you need a bunch of people in a room dancing for it to make sense, Not to say that you can't sit at home and listen to drum and bass on Spotify and have a great time, That's great. But where else do I do that? And I realized that it was while I was playing games. That's when I listen to this kind of music. I need that energy, especially if I'm doing anything competitive, and my friends know I'm competitive. And so my playlist for that was very aggressive music, and then I started to make that connection. It's like, wait, the whole reason I'm here is because of games. A lot of the music that influenced me early on was music from games, Wipeout. I was just talking about it backstage. It has like a Photex on, The Prodigy, all kinds of stuff that I was like, wow, as a kid, this blew my mind. So the desire for me to make Sprawl came from the fact that I wanted to create an album that you can play. And it's since then completely outgrown that, and there's a completely different experience now, but at its core, music is still a big part of what makes this experience work, It's all about having good sound design a good soundtrack that makes you feel like I am kicking ass in this game and I'm doing everything I can, and the music's helping me really, really get into it. You know, like I start feeling like I am that person.
Right.
I mean, I remember when Sprawl first came into Rogue, but Arch, I would love to kind of hear your reaction. Like when you saw it, like what was it that about? You're like, we have to be the publisher for this title.
Well, you can see the passion, right? And you can see from Carlos, right? That was the first thing that we looked at, and he said it already. But when you play it, the first time I experienced this, you could tell all of those things that you just said were that moment to moment. It's old school feel with the music. It was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'll just add too, we were looking for twitchy movement-based shooter to add to our portfolio. And so we looked at a lot of games, but this one just felt right, looked right, audio was amazing. And it's only gotten better, so yeah, well done. The other thing I want to add is it really sucks to sit next to this guy. Because by comparison, you're just so nerdy. There's just nothing to do about it. But you know, like what's really cool is that, you know, a lot of us are meeting face to face for the first time this week. Hadn't met Tyler before face to face. It's all been Zoom meetings, and just kind of getting to know these guys it's been amazing. We found out that he and I both like our favorite game of all time is Metroid Prime, and we didn't know that about one another. So this is the kind of stuff we finally get to learn.
And they're all taller than I thought they were going to be.
So much taller,
right?
And then of course we have Bartek from Plot Twist. So I was very fortunate to go to Gamescom last week, and it was an honor to be there and to see Bartek and his team win the most anticipated Xbox game at Gamescom.
Yeah!
The reception there was amazing, and there's something about, I mean, everything in game development exists in theory until the moment a gamer sits down and picks up that controller. And when that happened, Bartek, what was it like to see that live, real-time feedback? And then how did you take that back to the team? And then how did that affect development?
Yeah, so it was quite overwhelming because we worked on the game like for a year and a half in the shadow. Yeah. So even though you hope that the reception will be good, and there are points where you think to yourself, oh my god, are we making like the worst game on the planet? But we reviewed the game, the feedback was good, we sent you the game, the feedback was good, and we finally showed the game to the players, and the feedback still continues to be good, so we are humbled and grateful, and we have so much feedback now to put into the game, so that I probably won't make it even to the next Gamescom or PAX.
Aww.
I mean, Reggie, what's it like for you when you've come to these shows before and you get to see folks get their hands on a game for the first time? What is it kind of that you're looking for when you're watching them experience it?
You know, look, as we were building this panel, you know, and we were talking about, you know, what is it that has great impact out there in the marketplace. And the first thing is the game has to be super high quality. Right? It has to be super high quality. And as you look at the content from these three developers, you look at the content that's there at the Rogue booth, the quality of the content is so incredibly high. So that's the first thing, as I look at a game, you know, how does that quality bar get hit? And then the second thing, as you watch people play, it's then, is it intuitive but differentiated, right? Is the player understanding where to go, what to do, but the experience itself differentiated from what's out there in the marketplace? And I can remember this during the Rogue Jam itself. We saw some games that were out-and-out tributes to other content. That's not what developers should be investing their time and effort into doing. Create something new, create something different, create something that when that player picks up the controller, they really say, wow, this is a new, unique, differentiated experience.
Matt, do you want to speak to that at all?
Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
What's it like, you know, when we come to these conferences, and I love that we get to see, you know, especially at a public-facing conference, and we get to see a gamer get their hands on something for the first time.
Yeah, so for me, I like to watch from the background and just see how they play our games, and I know that these creators like to do the same thing. To understand where we've gone wrong, and you can see it because you become so attached to the games that you develop and you publish that you just start to love them no matter what. They're your babies. But when you see somebody who's never picked up your game before and they fumble with the UI or they don't understand why you got to reload, you know, like there's certain things.
Story there.
Why'd you look right at
There's certain.
I wonder what was that?
So there's certain things we just pick up from these shows that are great to see, and we saw it, you know, behind closed doors with press as well, showing off some games, and they would struggle in the same area, you know, of the same game. So it's great to see that and understand the hiccups and the choke points for our games.
I'll add a little bit to that. You know, this is the secret sauce. What you don't know is Bartek's at Gamescom. He sees the commentary coming in, and his team worked tirelessly from the time Gamescom was on to this show and addressed a lot of issues, hundreds of issues that they saw people playing with. And now he's seeing the confirmation of those fixes or not. And so your feedback during these shows is absolutely critical. You might not know it, but there are developers around you or at the booths watching, seeing how you do these things. I know all of you guys have commented on this, and I think it's a really great tool for us too to get the community involved.
And the last is the inverse of that. When something goes really well and you see someone just really immersed in the game and loving it. We had folks already yesterday who just 100% in our demos, which I don't think we've even done yet. And they've gone through and they're crazy about it.
Our QA has.
Yeah, our QA. So it's great to see that, and you just kind of watch it, and it's this genuine play, and no one's your friend, so they're not just telling you what you want to hear, you know, etc. And so that's been really valuable, I think, not just for Rogue, but for all.
It's exciting and sobering, right? So,
sorry about my comment.
Yeah.
You're really
That's true and not true at the same time.
I mean, so Tyler, what's it been like for you so far this weekend as you've seen folks get their hands on Sea Frog for the first time?
It's good. It's good. You guys are free QA, so it's you see. But yeah, it's good. You know, you think, you know, the littlest things, the reload, you know, things you don't even. Of course, it's, you know, the push the jump button, and they, you know, they might not, and being able to see them get stuck in the A tutorial room for way too long, and you slowly are dying inside. You can't say anything because you know they'll know they're being watched and they freak out. Yeah, but it's, you know, it's what needs to be done to make the game good, and yeah, like you said, when it works well, and you see them smile, and it makes it all worth it. The long hours.
I saw you watching folks play your game, and I walked up to him and said, "Is it torture, dude? Or are you okay?" And you had a very different response than I was expecting.
No, I love it. I love every part of it, you know. I think the number one worst thing that we can do as a creator, because at the end of the day, if we're making a game, we're a creative person, you know. The number one worst thing that we can do is try to make something that appeals to everybody, you know, just because we want to be loved, because we want to see everyone have the same reaction we have when we're creating something. That is a mistake. No matter what, you are going to create something that some people are going to love and other people they're just not going to understand. It's not for them. And what you get from the experience of seeing other people play your game is that the people that are trying to get into it but are getting hampered by small issues, those are the people that you want to fix these issues for, you know? And for me, he said it best, it's free QA, but also it's just a great way to see how people react to a game in a situation where they have no context. And beyond that, it's also a great way for me to confirm, like, you know, I can make this game better. I want this game to be the best that it can be. You know, I don't ever want to be happy with it. I want it to be 2 years from now, I'm still making patches for free, you know, because it's like, it's the kind of person that I am. And being able to see the people play the game is a number one indicator of like, what can I do next to make this experience better?
Carlos, you touched on this a little bit earlier, and I'm interested in, because what we've all been through in the last 2.5 years has been we've all experienced it differently, but it's been a universal experience with the pandemic. And what was it like to make a game in isolation? You know, what was that experience like for you?
2 more months and I would have got crazy for real. You know, my beard was like down here, hair was crazy, I hadn't gotten a haircut, but I mean, it also kept me sane. It kept me sane because it gave me something to do, and I'm very much a workaholic. I need to be doing something or else I just go mad, you know? So at first when quarantine first hit, it was like, all I was doing was like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to play the guitar again and like actually get good at it. And then I'm gonna get back into cooking. And then those 2 challenges were like, you know, it's a very gamer mentality. It's like, oh, how can I challenge myself more?
Right.
I threw that out after a month. Like I was like, okay, I'm good. Now what do I do? And that's when the game came along, and it was such, you know, like I don't have a background in games. I have a background being a modder, but I hadn't done that stuff in years. So it's been a huge learning experience, and the only way that it would have been possible was because of all that time that I had, you know. I was still working, despite that I was working in a restaurant back then. Shout out to Jason, love you, dude. And the whole reason that I was able to do that was because of all the time that was given. But it was my sanity, but it also was a situation that had I had more people around me, then I think I would have been able to do things a little bit differently. Because when it's just you and then my partner that I found later, Hannah Crawford, just talking on Discord for 8 hours a day, and we're just sitting there, we're just like working on this game obsessively, you get tunnel vision. You know, you start lacking the context that you need in order to bring unique parts of what you're experiencing day to day into whatever it is that you're creating. You know, that's the things that make whatever it is that you're doing special, you know, whether it's music, whether you're cooking, whether it's anything else, it's called inspiration. If you have no inspiration, after a while, it just, you know, you start going down the rabbit hole. So overall, I think doing this during COVID was the only way that this would have happened, but it also had a negative impact on a lot of the creative process. But ultimately, I think I'm in a position now where things worked out.
That's good.
Thank you. I think something so critical from the last couple of years is it taught us that we never know, and we get one shot, one go through this thing. And for a lot of creative folks, it was, if I have one go at this, what is the thing I'm gonna make? You know, for me, it was, you know, thankfully during the pandemic, I was able to shoot a movie. Matt, you've written a book. Tyler, what is it that during this incredibly difficult time that you said, I have to do this now?
Yeah, I mean, a very similar story actually, where CFrog would not exist without COVID, honestly, because working in a studio as an animator artist, and COVID hit, and we're all isolated, was freaking out, and I'm like, I'm just gonna put my energy into C#, and so I just started taking the free stuff online and just put my energy into that, and that's how I actually built the demo for CFrog originally. And I don't even know if you can call it a demo because it's an artist like putting little bits of code together just to make it semi-playable. And I ended up taking that and pitching my colleagues here, and is this any good? And and it grew out of that. So, but yeah, it was definitely hard, but couldn't have done it without it. So.
And for you, Bartek, what was it like, with the team? Because there's a good number of folks at Plot Twist, but folks were separate. What was that like for game development for your team?
Yeah, it was kind of complicated because in order to make a game that's very focused, you need a lot of communication, and it's a lot of communication that needs to be done on the daily basis between so many people, and because many people outside of our industry don't know how much teamwork a game needs. You need constant communication between a coder and a graphic designer, but also a coder and a audio guy, and a coder and a producer, and between writer and a game director. It's a constant communication, and when the flow of the communication is made difficult by, for example, COVID, it's a tough challenge, but it also can help you a bit, because if you go through and you'll end up successful, when you go back to the office, it's everything suddenly it's so much easier.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think it's so important for everyone to realize, you know, how difficult it is, how challenging it is, but yet how fun it is to make games and to make them in such a difficult, challenging time, you know, with such a unforeseen, you know, thing that was coming at all of us. And so it's made game development hard. And so anytime that I see folks online recognize what folks have been through in order to make these games for them, it's heartening. And so again, please keep up the positivity when you're looking at trailers, when you're interacting with developers on YouTube or social media. That stuff matters so much, especially more now. So the perseverance that all of you have had, you know, getting through this and making the games that we're about to play, it's been inspirational. I mean, you know, we got a lot of, you know, questions in from Twitter about what to ask our panelists. There was a whole section of, you know, what is it like to be a publisher, and that's not important necessarily right now, especially when we have these amazing indie developers on stage with us. And so, you know, for any indie devs that are also out there in the audience, I think it would be great to discuss, you know, when should an indie developer work with a publisher? What should they be looking for? And I think that I'd actually love to kick it off with you, Reggie. Like, when should an indie decide to, you know what, I'm gonna pitch a publisher?
So I think it's important to understand the role that a good publisher plays. And that first role is really providing you some clear, hopefully creative feedback on the content. You know, when you look at Archer, when you look at Matt, the amount of game experience that just these two individuals have, so, you know, think now about the entire team there at Rogue in particular, but a tremendous amount of experience, knowledge that can help you as a developer make a better game. So that's the first thing that a publisher provides. The second piece is, you know, the perspective, contacts within the industry, all of the other things that as a first-time game developer or early game developer needs. You know, how am I going to bring this to the marketplace? How am I going to launch this in a way that really makes sense and adds value to all of the creative work that I've done as a developer? That's the second thing that I would highlight. And then the third piece is, you know, when you've got that great game that's been gnawing at the back of your brain and you're looking to bring it to the marketplace, you know, to have perspective on where do I make tough choices in being able to bring this content, because you don't have unlimited time, you don't have unlimited budget.
Right.
There are always certain constraints out there that you're trying to deal with.
Right.
And a great publisher will help you navigate those choices to create a game that's going to work in the marketplace, it's going to get discovered, and that's going to help you continue to hone your own craft. So those would be the three things I would highlight just right off the top.
I mean, Carlos, for you, I mean, as a developer, when did you make that decision? I should go and pitch to a publisher, and then what is it that you think that indie developers should be looking for from their publisher, you know, as they make that very critical choice?
Well, for me personally, the decision that I was going to pitch this to the publisher happened the day that I started working on the game. I knew that eventually I was going to work on it to the point where I wanted this to have that platform. It needed that extra step, it needed that extra push. You're going to need someone to have your back and do that with you. I was speaking about this the other day, it's when you're in the business of being exploited creatively, because that's, I mean, as a creative, that's what you do. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just the way that it works. Like, you make something and you need someone to sell it for you know, or you can try doing it yourself, and depending on what scale you're at and what it is that you're making, like the resources that a publisher or a record label or et cetera, depending on what creative industry you're in, the resources that they have are going to help you be successful and make a living and pursue what you love creatively. So the decision that I was going to work with the publisher happened very early on. The decision on which publisher we chose, because we were contested for a little, we had a lot of options on the table, and then Scott over at Rogue sent us an email, like I think at the 11th hour, like we were already narrowing down a list of people we wanted to work with, and then all it took was one conversation, you know, and it was instant, because the number one lesson that I've learned from being in music, because I've had every single music manager, agent, and people working behind me, labels, big, small, in between everything, it doesn't matter what scale they're at, what matters is if they're good people. And everyone here, Matt, Chris, Levi, everyone at Rogue, they're good people. I can go out and I can have a drink with them. I can have a conversation with them. And they love games. That's the number one thing. They're not hampering us creatively. They're not hampering me creatively. I tell them a crazy idea, they're like, okay, that sounds great, let's do it. You know, it's not, there's no meddling that's happening. And when you're creative, that you get used to that. You know, because it happens in so many other industries. You're working on a song, it's like, okay, this doesn't have the appeal that it needs to, you know, penetrate the marketplace. It's just, that is soul crushing after a while.
Yeah.
But after, like I said, a few conversations that I started meeting everyone, then we started talking more, it became very apparent. It's like, okay, you guys get it. You guys are good people first and foremost. You want to enable your creatives instead of hamper them because you want to make money. And you're not going to force me to do something that I don't want to do. You know, you're going to support our decisions and you're going to do everything you can to help us navigate something as difficult as making and putting out a video game, you know. And Rogue has, to this day, had been nothing but the most exemplary people that I've ever worked with in basically anything creative. Besides my music manager right now, that guy's great.
I was going to pay you after the conference for those comments.
I was going to pay him too. Sheesh.
Yeah, where's my check?
Yeah, if I can just jump in from a publisher point of view for a minute. Publishers, I feel like in this room, you say the word publisher and people automatically hate you. But I really do like the word label better. It just feels better. And that is what we're building at Rogue. Just to talk about us for a second. We just want to make cool games that people like so much that they want to wear our shirts with some level of pride. And I feel like the business will align behind that. And so that's what we're doing. And we do love games, right? And so we're trying to help these guys make better games. So my advice to folks, for folks who are going to pitch publishers, from a publisher point of view, number one is decide if you really need a publisher. And then look at your publisher and see what games they're into. And see if your game aligns with them. And if they can really reach the audience that your game needs to reach. Because there are a lot of great publishers out there that have a certain kind of game, Rogue included, I think. And you know, you wouldn't want to necessarily bring, I don't know, I'm not going to name genres, I'll just get in trouble. But you wouldn't want to necessarily bring certain types of games to us. And the other thing, if you are serious about it and you identify Rogue as a publisher you want to work with, at least from things that we look for, it doesn't need to be, your game doesn't need to be finished, and it doesn't need to be you know, in an ultra polished state. But the thing that you're pitching that matters the most does need to be there. And what I mean by that is whether it could be the simplest idea, is if you've nailed the mechanics so well that you're proud of it and you think it's going to dazzle us, that's enough. Yeah. Along with the rest of your pitch deck to show us what your vision is. And we can come in and start helping at that point. I think you would do yourself a disservice if you were to go the other route and pitch us a concept that is just a concept, and you haven't demonstrated any way that you're going to get to that final product either. Because we get a lot of those, as every publisher does, and it really just depends on the pedigree of the person who's coming in at that point. You have to trust that they can deliver, and you generally trust folks who have already delivered. It's the safest bet.
And it takes a long time to build a community and market products, let me tell you. Early, right, as he said, the core loop is there. Show it to us. We'll give you feedback. We regularly give feedback on things we don't pick up.
Yeah.
And 6 months later, and in some cases, some folks that we've signed, later on down the road, we see it again, and they took our feedback, and all of a sudden, there's some magic there, and now it's signed. And so, you know, we continue to communicate with them, but starting early is a really good idea, because it takes, in some cases, years to build games. It also takes years to get people interested in your game. So longer the better.
Yeah. And please come by our booth and pitch us your games. We're looking to see those.
I mean, I remember early days, Matt, when we were kind of talking about, you know, like why do publishers have the reputations that they have? And, you know, we had a really hard conversation about that. And also and then we were kind of like, well, let's do this like the Summer of George. We'll take that, and then we'll do the opposite. And it's been a fun ride so far. And I'm so, like, when I go into our booth and I see all of our games, I am so excited about just the sheer creativity on display. It is humbling. It is a privilege that developers come to us and ask us to publish their titles. It is something that I and Arch and Matt and Derek and everybody else at Rogue does not take for granted. It is our privilege to look at these games. It is our privilege to publish them on their behalf. So, yeah, it's just...
Yeah, and a lot of damn work went into these builds. There's so many builds. I'm having nightmares about builds, just iterative feedback over and over again. I know these guys are as well, and you know, it's just so much hard work that goes into creating something that is fun. And these guys really killed it. So, well done, gentlemen. Great.
Part of my job here is to keep an eye on that clock down there. So we've got 12 minutes left, and I really want to kind of dig into some of the fun questions that we did get on Twitter. And I'm going to start with something and kind of stir it up a little bit. You know, NFTs and blockchains are still yes, yes. I'll reveal my bias right now. So. But I would love to hear, so for example, Reggie, what are your thoughts on this trend, on NFTs, on blockchain, and how it's affecting gaming?
Yes, I've made a number of public comments on this, and look, first, if you've got a game, it's got to be fun, right? I've made that comment many, many times. So let's start there, right? You've got a fun game, it's executed well. Is there an element within the blockchain that can help it? I don't know. But if it can, that's an idea that certainly I'm open to. If there's a way that you can have content that the player wants to own over time and be able to monetize over time, it's something that I'm open to. So the way I describe blockchain NFT, I am not one of those that is absolutely against it.
Okay.
I'm not one of those who's absolutely for it.
Right.
You have to start with, is the content great? Does the content play well? Is it fun? And now, does blockchain or NFT add an element that creates value for the player? If so, then I'm interested. Personally, I've not seen that experience yet. But I can also say I'm looking at a lot of those types of experiences and providing feedback. Because I do think there's something there. It's just not fully developed yet. That's my perspective.
What do you think, Tyler? What do you think about NFTs and blockchains and things like that?
Yeah, similar to Reggie there, kind of in the middle of the road. And I don't know, as an developer, I try to look at what I'm doing and see, you know, I barely have enough time to like make and develop content for everyone in the game, let alone a select few, or even one person trying to like, I'm gonna set aside to make this for just one person. It's not that practical, but I am very interested to see where it can go as long as it, again, like makes the experience of the player better in some way. And we definitely haven't seen that yet, so.
I'm gonna just keep going on down the line, but I'm gonna pop over you, Matt. I'm gonna go to Carlos.
You said something, Levi?
I'm too punk rock for that question. It's bad juju. You don't want me answering that one. Hey, look at me. Come on. You think this guy's supposed to answer that question? No. I think philosophically, fundamentally, there's a good idea somewhere in there about providing artists and creators with a way to monetize over a long time, over a long period of time.
Yeah.
I think its current implementation is full of more holes than Swiss cheese. There's a lot of issues there that need to be addressed before it can be anything that really truly enables more than a select few creators from reaching a certain zenith of popularity and money, and then beyond that, it's got a branding issue, dude. Like it's just you align yourself with that, and then suddenly it's like half of your talent pool decides that they no longer want to work with you. And I know a lot of artists that have made a lot of money doing that stuff, and they keep telling me they made a lot of money, but they only tell me. You know, it's one of those. It's like they only tell me, and I'm like, why aren't you talking about this? It's like, oh well, okay, well that's why So there's issues there. Fundamentally, is there a good idea there? I'm sure there is. I think over time, can it develop into something that can truly enable a creator or creative? Yeah, I think it can. I think just where it is right now is just not. It's bad juju. Just don't touch it.
Yeah.
It's strange. Like, it's one of those things where I do goof on blockchain, on NFTs, and I think it's just its current implementation is what I have seen has hurt people, and it's hurt people that cannot afford to be hurt by that.
Yeah.
So I think I'd love to move down the line, and Bartek, what do you think about NFTs and blockchains and how that's affecting gaming?
Yeah, well, my thoughts are very similar to Carlos's, and I think that there are so many big greedy companies that will test it for us, and they are hated already, so... So since their PR won't suffer, so we can wait, and maybe somewhere along the line, along the road, we'll get back to the idea in a better and more reasonable way.
Yeah.
Bartek, what would you say to somebody, whether they're young or any age, that's considering getting into game development? What would be that first initial kind of piece of advice that you would give them as they kind of start this journey?
Do it. That's for sure. Because I was a cook, I was a driver. Some of the guys at our company were security guards before, and there is a point when you maybe feel that it is too late for you to change the job, to try it out, but you might just be, one plot twist away from becoming a game developer. So,
like what you did there.
How about you, Tyler? What would you give somebody maybe just thinking about getting into games? What would be that core piece of advice you'd give them at the start?
Yeah, I mean, we're a 3-4-man team with contractors, and we actually got our first intern who's in school, and she's here today, Claire.
Nice!
And, she's thinking about getting into games, and I'm like, it's a lot of work. I work so many hours, but I don't think I could go back to doing anything else. Like, I work a lot because I enjoy what I do every day, 100%. So it's very rewarding. But you got to be able to put the hours in, put the time in, and take criticisms, and
Definitely.
it's good.
So this next one's for you, Reggie. What do you think about kind of the culture of crunch that's currently, still very much a big part of video game development, and how can that be addressed and remedied?
Yeah, I think crunch is an outcome of bad management.
Okay. Yeah! Yeah!
And what I mean by that is, crunch happens because, timetables aren't right, launch dates aren't right, people have let things get out of control. So the mentality is, we'll just throw more people and more hours to fix the problem. And my background is the complete opposite, meaning, figure out what the problem is and fix the problem. Not just simply throw more people, more hours to try and fix it. And so when you look at examples across our industry where there have been really bad examples of crunch.
Yeah.
It's because there have been a number of bad decisions along the way, and at the end, people are just throwing hours against the problem. The other piece that I would highlight, though, is I think in this industry's past, there was a mentality of, I worked 80 hours on a game and, it was a good thing. And I think part of what needs to happen is there needs to be a recognition that, no, that's a bad thing, right? Approaching it from that standpoint is not the right thing for the developer, for the teams working on it. And so it has to be flipped on its head. And more teams, more and more developers, more and more publishers are taking this approach. But I think, unfortunately, the legacy of this problem is still there in the industry.
One thing that we decided to do, Rogue, as a publisher, to really address that issue of, balance in work and in life, and especially in the light of, what we've all been through in the last couple of years is, Matt, our founder, our CEO, made the very progressive decision that we're going to be moving to a 4-day work week, starting the week after PAX.
Let's just give that, we found leading up to PAX actually that we talked about it. Teams are working really damn hard on everything, which is great. Sometimes you do have to work hard, and but it just seemed like it was so much work coming together to get everything done. And we thought, man, we got to think about another way. And so we did start to, as a leadership team, talk about a 4-day work week. What we didn't want to do was make you work more hours on the days you're there. So we're not going to do any of that shit. Excuse me. And then so the plan is just to have Fridays off, enjoy your 3-day weekend, come back refreshed, and work hard while you're on the clock. And we hope it's going to improve the quality of the lives of our employees, right? That's what we want.
Yeah. Woo!
I mean, it's the biggest pro labor thing. It's just empower your team, empower your people to own their work, to get their job. Like, just get your stuff done in the time that it takes to get it done. And whether that you have to do something at 11 on a Tuesday, sometimes that happens. But other times, yes, you got what you need to get done, and then that's.
Yeah, I just want to add too, we had to reorganize the Friday schedule. We had weekly meetings with a number of big partners, so that everybody from the Xboxes, the PlayStations, to the Netflixes of the world, and every single company, to their credit, said, "Hooray for you guys! Awesome work. We support this. We'll move any meeting through you guys." And so I think there's a recognition industry-wide that the workforce out there is sort of clamoring for more life, and if we can do it in a way where we can handle it and juggle it, that's not going to materially impact the business, but it's going to be very meaningful for our people, just do it. Yeah. So that's where we are with it.
Yeah!
Okay, well, that takes us to the end of our time. I want to give a monster thank you to every single person on this panel. I really appreciate you coming out here and joining us, and I really appreciate everyone in this room for spending time with us here today. That means a lot to every single person up here, and of course everyone watching from home. That watching this is what you chose to do, and that matters. That means a lot to all of us up here, so I appreciate it. I just want to leave you with everyone up here. Their titles are all playable in the Rogue Games booth over in the expo hall up on the 4th floor, and we are giving away today at 4 p.m. An Xbox Series X, which is perfect because The Last Case of Benedict Fox will be on Game Pass when it launches.
Yeah!
So come on by the booth, play the games. Let us know what you think. Let us honestly know what you think, because that's what makes these games better. And if you are an indie dev, please seek me out, or Arch, or Matt, and show us your games. Like I said, it's such a wonderful, privileged position to see everything that you're working on. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. And one big last round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.
Yeah! Woo!
have an amazing PAX. See you all over there.